Dr. Yuna Kim pulled her thick jacket tighter as the Martian wind howled above the ice shaft. The cold here was unlike anything on Earth, sharp and brutal, cutting through even the most advanced thermal suits. She had been climbing down this frozen tunnel for 2 hours now, her headlamp the only source of light in the endless darkness below. 3 years ago, her deep space scanners had detected something strange buried beneath Mars's northern ice cap. Energy readings that made no sense, signatures that her equipment couldn't identify. The Galactic Council had approved her excavation request, thinking it might be some ancient alien artifact. They had no idea what she was really about to uncover. Her assistant, Minho Park, followed close behind, his breathing heavy in the thin air. Dr. Kim, are you sure about this? We're already 3 kilometers down. What if the ice shifts? Yuna didn't answer immediately. Her scanner was going crazy, beeping and flashing in ways she'd never seen before. The energy readings were getting stronger with every step they took deeper into the ice. Whatever was down here had been sleeping for a very long time. Then her headlamp beam hit something that made her heart stop. Metal. Smooth, dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The surface stretched far beyond what her light could reach, disappearing into the darkness on all sides. "Minho, look at this," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the thin air. They moved closer, their boots crunching on the ancient ice. The metal structure was enormous, bigger than anything she'd ever seen. It looked like the hull of a ship, but not just any ship. This was a warship, its design unmistakably human despite being buried under ice that had formed 500,000 years ago. Minho's face went pale behind his helmet visor. "That's impossible. Humans didn't have space travel 500,000 years ago. We barely had fire back then." But the evidence was right in front of them. The ship bore markings that were definitely human in origin, symbols that looked almost familiar but belonged to no known human language or culture. The hull material itself was something beyond their understanding, existing in a state that their scanners couldn't properly analyze. Yuna approached the ship cautiously, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. She pulled out her analysis tools and began taking readings. The metal was unlike anything in their databases. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, phasing in and out of normal space-time. "The quantum signature is off the charts," she muttered, adjusting her scanner settings. "This material shouldn't be possible with any known technology." As she worked, Minho explored the visible section of the hull, looking for any kind of entrance or access point. "Dr. Kim, over here. I found something that looks like a control panel." Yuna hurried over to where Minho was standing. Set into the hull was a smooth section covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they looked at them. The panel was dark, showing no signs of power after all these millennia. "Be careful," Yuna warned as Minho reached out to touch the panel. "We don't know what kind of systems this ship might have." But it was too late. Minho's gloved hand brushed against the panel's surface, and immediately the entire section blazed to life with brilliant blue light. The symbols began moving and changing, displaying text in a language that neither of them recognized but somehow understood. "What did you do?" Yuna gasped, stumbling backward as the light grew brighter. "I barely touched it," Minho protested, but he was staring at the panel with wide eyes. "Dr. Kim, I can read this. I don't know how, but I can actually read what it's saying." The text scrolled past quickly, but certain phrases stood out clearly. "Fleet status dormant, threat level unknown, awakening protocol initiated." Before either of them could react further, the panel pulsed once with blinding intensity. They felt rather than saw something launch from the ship, a signal or message that raced upward through the ice, through Mars' thin atmosphere, and out, into the vast darkness of space. The signal moved faster than light itself, riding quantum channels that most civilizations didn't even know existed. It passed through the asteroid belt, swept past Jupiter's moons and continued toward the inner solar system, where a small blue planet orbited its yellow star. Back in the ice shaft, Yuna and Minho stood in stunned silence as the panel went dark, again. The ship around them remained silent and still. But something fundamental had changed. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for 500,000 years, and neither of them had any idea what consequences their discovery would bring. "We need to report this immediately," Una said finally, her voice shaking. "The Council needs to know what we've found." But deep down she suspected that whatever they had just awakened was far beyond the Galactic Council's ability to understand or control. Admiral Jiwan Li felt the first sensation in centuries as warmth spread through her frozen body. Her eyes fluttered open to complete darkness, but her enhanced vision quickly adjusted to reveal the familiar walls of her stasis chamber. The crushing weight of 5 kilometers of ocean water pressed down above her. But the reinforced walls of Sector 7 held firm as they had for 500,000 years. The beacon signal still echoed in her mind, carried through quantum channels that bypassed normal space and time. Someone had found one of the old ships on Mars. Someone had accidentally triggered the awakening protocol that she and her people had hoped would never be needed again. Her body felt strange as it came back to life. The stasis field had preserved her perfectly, but 500,000 years of sleep left her muscles stiff and her mind foggy. She flexed her fingers, watching as her enhanced nervous system reconnected with her body. The genetic modifications her people had made to themselves so long ago were still working, still keeping her alive and functional despite the impossible passage of time. Around her, the massive underwater complex began to wake up. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows across rows and rows of stasis pods that stretched into the distance. Each pod contained a member of her crew, volunteers who had chosen to sleep through the ages rather than watch their civilization pretend to be primitive. The first pod to open belonged to Lieutenant Commander Taehyun Cho, her second in command. Steam hissed as the preservation field dissolved, and she watched as his eyes opened for the first time in millennia. Like her, his body had been enhanced to survive this kind of extended stasis, but she could see the confusion in his face as his memories slowly returned. "Admiral?" Taehyun's voice was rough from disuse, but his training kicked in quickly. "What's our status?" "The beacon has been triggered," Jiwan replied, helping him sit up as more pods began opening around them. "Mars excavation team found one of the sleeper ships." Taehyun's face went pale as the full implications hit him. "Then they're back." "I'm afraid so." More crew members were waking up now, each one going through the same process of confusion, recognition, and then growing dread as they remembered why they had gone into stasis in the first place. These weren't ordinary humans, though they looked like them. Each had been modified with technology that most of the galaxy considered impossible, their lifespans extended indefinitely, their minds enhanced to process information at superhuman speeds. Captain Minseo Kang emerged from her pod, shaking her head to clear the stasis fog. "How long were we out?" 500,000 years, Jiwan answered. "Give or take a few millennia." The number was almost impossible to grasp. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen while they slept. The galaxy had moved on, evolved, changed in ways they couldn't imagine. And through it all, their automated systems had maintained the illusion that Earth was a primitive world populated by simple humans who had barely learned to travel between planets. "The Devourers," Jiwan whispered, her voice carrying clearly in the vast chamber. The word sent a chill through every person present. They all remembered the last war, the desperate battle that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. They remembered what it had cost to stop the enemy the first time. Dr. Sun Ho-yoon, their chief science officer, was already at his monitoring station, checking the status of their hidden fleet. "Admiral, the dimensional anchors are stable. All ships report ready. Status: the stellar core reactors are still at full power." Jiwan nodded, though the news brought her no comfort. Their fleet existed in pocket dimensions, hidden from normal space by technology that bent the laws of physics. Each ship was powered by the captured heart of a dying star, armed with weapons that could unweave the fabric of reality itself. It was technology so advanced that they had voluntarily hidden it from the rest of the galaxy, afraid of what it might do if it fell into the wrong hands. "Begin awakening protocols for all sectors," she ordered. We need every ship, every crew member. If the Devourers have truly returned, we'll need everything we have. Around the Pacific Ocean, similar facilities were coming online. Thousands of stasis pods opening, revealing the true guardians of humanity. These were the people who had built an empire that spanned galaxies, who had developed technology that made them nearly godlike in their power. And they had given it all up, chosen to hide and pretend to be weak because they understood that some power was too dangerous to use. But now they had no choice. The enemy that had driven them into hiding was back, and this time there might be no one else to stop them. Jiwan felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders as she prepared to reveal humanity's greatest secret to a galaxy that had forgotten they were ever anything more than a minor spacefaring species. The masquerade was about to end, and the real war was about to begin. The massive chamber that housed the Galactic Council had never seen chaos like this before. Delegates from 1,000 worlds were shouting over each other, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the flood of panicked voices. At the center of it all, holographic displays showed energy readings from the Sol system that made no sense whatsoever. Ambassador Hyun Seo stood quietly at the human podium, watching the pandemonium with calm eyes. He had represented Earth for over 500 years, playing his role perfectly as the ambassador from a young, developing world. The other delegates had always seen him as slightly primitive, a representative from a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. How wrong they had been. Council leader Vexitar, a massive creature with writhing tentacles and 3 eyes, slammed his gavel repeatedly trying to restore order. His species had ruled the galactic government for millennia, and he had never seen readings like the ones coming from human space. Order, order! Vexitar's voice boomed through the chamber's speakers. We must address this crisis immediately. The energy signatures were impossible to ignore. Every monitoring station in the galaxy was picking up the same thing: massive power, sources appearing throughout the Sol system, each one producing more energy than entire star systems. Ships were materializing out of nowhere, their quantum signatures unlike anything in the Council's databases. Delegate Zara Thek from the Hegemony pointed one of her 4 arms at the display. These readings suggest technology beyond our understanding. How is this possible from a species we classified as barely spacefaring? The humans have been hiding something from us, growled Commander Braktor of the warrior clans. This could be an invasion force. Hyun raised his hand, and something in his calm demeanor made the entire chamber fall silent. For centuries, he had played the role of the humble representative, always deferring to the older, more advanced species. But now his posture was different, more confident, more commanding. Honored delegates, Hyun began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I believe I owe you all an explanation. Vexitar's tentacles writhed with agitation. Indeed you do, Ambassador. These energy readings from your system are breaking our instruments. Explain what your people are doing. Hyun smiled sadly. I must confess, Council Leader, that I have not been entirely truthful about my people for the past 5 centuries. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different kind of energy. Fear was replacing confusion as the implications of his words began to sink in. You see, Hyun continued, activating his personal holographic display, the beings you have. Observed on Earth's surface, the humans you have studied and catalogued as a young species, they are volunteers. People who chose to live simple lives while our real civilization maintained watch from the shadows. The hologram showed Earth as the Council had never seen it before. Hidden beneath the oceans were massive structures, cities that dwarfed anything the Council had built. Space around Earth revealed itself to be filled with installations that had been invisible to their sensors, cloaked by technology they couldn't detect. This is impossible, whispered Dr. Melandra, the Council's chief scientist. Our surveys showed no signs of advanced technology on Earth. Because we didn't want you to see it, Hyun replied simply. We withdrew from galactic affairs 500,000 years ago when we realized our technology had grown too powerful, too dangerous for developing species to encounter. He gestured to the display, which now showed star charts spanning multiple galaxies. Humanity once ruled an empire that stretched across 3 galactic clusters. We had weapons that could destroy entire solar systems, ships that could travel between dimensions, technology that made us nearly godlike in our power. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Every delegate stared at the human ambassador with new eyes, seeing him not as a representative from a primitive world but as something far more dangerous. But we learned that such power comes with terrible responsibility, Hyun continued. We saw what our technology could do in the wrong hands, how it could corrupt entire civilizations. So we made a choice. We hid our true capabilities and allowed the galaxy to develop naturally without our interference. Vextar's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme distress in his species. You mean to tell us that for all these centuries, while we believed we were the advanced species guiding younger worlds, you were actually watching over us? Like parents watching their children play, Hyun confirmed. We were always there, ready to intervene if necessary, but hoping we would never need to. Commander Braktor stood up, his warrior's instincts making him reach for weapons that weren't there. Then why reveal yourselves now? What has changed? Hyun's expression grew grave, because the threat that drove us into hiding has returned. The Devourers are back, and this time they're coming for the entire galaxy. The energy readings you're detecting are our fleet coming out of dimensional storage. We're preparing for a war that most of you don't even remember from your species' legends. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of the revelation settled over them. Humanity hadn't been the junior partner in galactic civilization. They had been the secret guardians all along, the hidden protectors who had sacrificed their open existence to keep the galaxy safe. And now, something was coming that was terrible enough to force them out of hiding. The space above New Geneva had been empty just moments before, filled with nothing but stars and the gentle glow of the nearby nebula. Then reality seemed to fold in on itself, and the eternal dawn appeared as if it had always been there. The massive ship stretched over 15 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull made of some crystalline material that caught and reflected starlight in impossible ways, creating auroras of color that danced across its surface. Admiral Jaiwon Lee stood on the bridge, watching through the viewport, as her crew worked at stations that defied every law of physics the Galactic Council understood. The ship's bridge existed, in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing her to see not just normal space but the quantum layers beneath reality where her fleet had been hiding for 500,000 years. "Admiral, all sectors reporting ready," called out Commander Yoonji Park from the tactical station. Her fingers moved across controls that responded to thought as much as touch, interfacing directly with the ship's consciousness. The Eternal Dawn wasn't just a vessel. It was a living entity, powered by the captured heart of a dying star. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as the human fleet emerged from dimensional storage. Each ship materialized with the same reality-bending effect, their crystalline, hulls shimmering into existence above major galactic strongholds. The Council's monitoring stations were going insane, their instruments unable to process what they were seeing. Captain Min Jae-yoon felt his destroyer, Silent Thunder, phase into normal space near the Rigel sector. His ship was smaller than the Admiral's flagship, only 8 kilometers long, but it packed weapons that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Through his enhanced senses, he could already detect the approaching enemy scouts at the galaxy's edge. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported his sensor officer, Lieutenant Kiwoo Nam. "Multiple bogies moving in non-standard flight patterns." Min Jae nodded grimly. The Devourer scouts moved like no normal ship could, writhing through space as if they were swimming through liquid rather than flying through vacuum. They consumed everything in their path: matter, energy, even light itself, growing larger and stronger with each meal. "Lock reality anchors on the lead ship," Min Jae ordered. "Let's remind them why they fled our galaxy the first time." The reality anchor weapons were humanity's answer to enemies that could bend space and time. They locked sections of space into fixed quantum states, preventing the Devourers from using their dimension-shifting abilities. It was technology that most species couldn't even comprehend, let alone build. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Jiwon opened quantum communication channels to every human ship in the fleet. Her voice would reach them instantly, carried through dimensions that bypass the normal limitations of space and time. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee," she began, her words reaching captains and crew members across 17 star systems. 500,000 years ago, we swore an oath to protect this galaxy from threats it couldn't understand or fight. Today, we honor that oath. The response was immediate. Hundreds of human ships acknowledged her transmission, their crews ready for a battle they had been preparing for across centuries of sleep. These weren't ordinary humans anymore. They had enhanced themselves, modified their bodies and minds to survive the kind of warfare that could destroy entire realities. Captain Borum Jin, commanding the battleship Star's Edge near the Vega system, watched as Devourer ships began emerging from the spaces between dimensions. They looked like living shadows, their hulls seeming to absorb light and matter as they moved. Each ship was unique, shaped by the countless worlds and civilizations they had consumed. "They're different this time," Borum reported over the quantum link. "Larger, more organized. They've learned from our last encounter." Jiwan had expected as much. The Devourers came from a universe where entropy flowed backward, where chaos decreased instead of increased. In their realm, they were the natural order, beings of pure consumption that converted everything they touched into more of themselves. They had nearly succeeded in dragging the entire galaxy into their reality 500,000 years ago. "Remember, your training," Jiwan broadcast to the fleet. "These beings exist partially outside our reality. Standard weapons won't work. We need to force them fully into our dimension before we can destroy them." The human ships began moving into formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming as they powered up weapons that operated on principles the Council's greatest scientists considered impossible. Probability cannons that fired streams of concentrated possibility. Entropy reversers that could age enemy ships to dust in seconds. Singularity mines that created temporary black holes. Lieutenant Commander Donghae Lim aboard the frigate Dawn's Light watched his tactical display as more enemy ships appeared. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildup at the Galactic Rim. They're bringing through something big." Jiwan felt a chill run down her enhanced spine. The last time the Devourers had invaded, they had brought their Overmind, a creature of pure entropy that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Destroying it had required humanity to sacrifice most of their fleet and go into hiding for 500,000 years. "All ships, prepare for full engagement," she ordered. "Today we fight not just for our galaxy, but for the very nature of reality itself. The Devourers seek to turn our universe into their feeding ground. We are the only thing standing between them and the consumption of everything we hold dear." The battle was about to begin, and the fate of every living being in the galaxy hung in the balance. The war had begun across 17 different star systems at once, turning the galaxy into a battlefield where the very laws of physics became weapons. Space itself was twisted and torn as two incompatible realities clashed against each other, each trying to impose its own rules on the universe. Commander Suna Kang gripped the controls of her fighter as she dove through what looked like frozen lightning. These weren't normal energy streams, but crystallized time itself. Moments from the past and future trapped in solid form by the reality distortions created by the battle. Her small ship darted between these temporal fragments while her probability cannon charged for another shot. "Target acquired," she muttered, locking onto a Devourer scout that was writhing through space like a living shadow. The creature ship was trying to consume a nearby asteroid field, growing larger with every rock it devoured. Suna fired her probability cannon, and the weapon didn't shoot energy or matter. Instead, it fired pure possibility, rewriting the chances of the enemy ship's existence until it became nothing more than a quantum ghost, fading away like a bad dream. Behind her, the massive battleship Dawn's Edge unleashed its main weapons. Captain Do Yun Im watched from his bridge as singularity torpedoes streaked toward the enemy formation. Each torpedo contained a compressed black hole, carefully contained until impact. When they hit their targets, temporary black holes bloomed in space, sucking in everything around them before collapsing back into nothingness seconds later. "Direct hits on enemy formation 7, reported his weapons officer. 3 Devourer ships consumed by the singularities. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, two more seemed to appear from the spaces between dimensions. The Devourers were bringing their full force to bear, pouring through dimensional rifts like a dark tide that threatened to swallow everything in its path. At the center of the battle, Admiral Jiwan faced the true enemy. The Devourer, Overmind, wasn't a ship or even a creature in any sense that normal beings could understand. It was entropy itself given consciousness, a force of pure consumption that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Looking at it directly was impossible because it existed in too many realities at once. The Eternal Dawn shuddered as reality-warping energies washed over its crystalline hull. The ship's core, powered by a captured Big Bang held in perpetual stasis, was straining to maintain their existence in normal space. Around them, stars were beginning to flicker and change color as the Overmind's presence altered the fundamental constants of physics. "Admiral, the dimensional barriers are failing," reported Commander Yunji Park, her voice tight with strain. "If this continues, they'll drag our entire galaxy into their reality." Jiwan knew what that meant. In the Devourer's universe, entropy flowed backward. Life didn't grow and evolve. It was consumed and converted into more of them. Every living being in the galaxy would become part of their endless hunger, their consciousness absorbed into the collective appetite that drove the Devourers across the multiverse. She looked at her tactical display, seeing the positions of every human ship in the fleet. They were fighting bravely, their impossible weapons holding the line against an enemy that most species couldn't even perceive. But it wasn't enough. The Devourers were too numerous, too alien, too powerful in their own reality. There was only one option left. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee," she broadcast across the quantum channels. "Prepare for Protocol Omega." The silence that followed her words was deafening. Every captain, every crew member knew what Protocol Omega meant. They had hoped never to use it, had prayed that some other solution could be found, but now there was no choice left. Protocol Omega would create a permanent dimensional barrier around the galaxy, sealing it off from the Devourer's reality forever. The energy required would come from their own technology, burning out every stellar core reactor, every probability weapon, every reality anchor in the fleet. They would save the galaxy, but at the cost of everything that made them powerful. "Admiral," Captain Minji's voice came over the comm from the silent thunder. "We understand. All ships standing by for final protocol." Jiwan closed her eyes, for a moment, thinking of all the civilizations they were about to save. The Galactic Council species who still didn't understand what was happening. The countless worlds filled with beings who would never know how close they had come to complete annihilation. "Execute Protocol Omega," she commanded. Across the battlefield, human ships began channeling all their power into dimensional generators. The stellar cores that powered their vessels started burning brighter and hotter, converting matter directly into the exotic energy needed to reshape reality itself. One by one, the impossible weapons fell silent as their power was redirected to the barrier. The effect was visible across the galaxy as a wall of pure energy began forming at the dimensional boundaries. The Devourer ships found themselves pushed back, unable to maintain their existence in normal space as the barrier solidified around them. The Overmind let out a sound that existed in frequencies beyond hearing, a scream of rage and hunger that echoed across multiple dimensions as it was forced back into its own reality. Commander Suna felt her fighter's systems shutting down as the last of its power fed into the barrier. Around her, the crystallized time streams were dissolving back into normal space as reality reasserted itself. The impossible had become possible one last time, and then it was over. The barrier sealed with a sound like the universe taking a deep breath. The Devourers were gone, trapped in their own reality, unable to cross the dimensional wall that now protected the galaxy. But the cost was exactly what they had feared. Admiral Jiwan looked around her bridge as the lights dimmed and the quantum displays went dark. The Eternal Dawn was now just a normal ship, its crystalline hull turning dull and gray as the stellar core finally burned out. Around the galaxy, the same thing was happening to every human vessel. "Mission accomplished," she said quietly. "Stand down all systems." They had won, but the victory had stripped them of their godlike technology. They were human again, truly human, forced to start over with basic science and simple tools. The galaxy was safe, but no one would ever know the true cost of that safety. As the fleet began the long journey home using conventional engines, Jiwan smiled. They had kept their ancient oath, protected the galaxy from a threat it couldn't understand or fight. And when the next impossible danger arose, they would be ready to make the same sacrifice again. The legend would fade, the truth would be forgotten, and humanity would return to appearing primitive and harmless. But they would be watching, always watching, ready to awaken when the galaxy needed them most.